Welcome to the Candor Intelligence Briefing. It's August 27th of 2024. My name is Alex Banish, and today's main topic is Telegram and other social media, what it really is, what it can do for us, and what it cannot do for us. So obviously, the Telegram boss has been arrested in France. They want him for apparent complicity when it comes to all the criminal stuff that's being done with the app, with the service, the Telegram service. So it's a wide range of activity. There's been some compliance from Telegram with the Europeans, for example. So when it comes to abuse of minors, when it comes to terrorism and stuff of that nature, there's been some compliance. But the Europeans say it's not compliant enough, right? And so, Telegram has become massively popular. All kinds of people are using it. Even the Ukrainians have been using it in the war. The Russians have been using it in the war. They basically rely on it. They don't have anything better, which is kind of strange, but also very understandable given how incompetent the Russian system really is. So many people are using it right now. And you get two very simple narratives presented to you right now in the media. So the mainstream narrative and the so-called alternative narrative about Telegram, neither of which truly describe reality when it comes to this platform and the use of it. So obviously, mainstream media will tell you it's a very simple matter. Telegram just needs to comply with the European Union and the United States and whatnot. And the compliance usually means that there's a backdoor in it in the future. That's what kind of the governments want. They want to be able to just access anything if there's a warrant or a secret warrant. And of course, there needs to be a point where you can reach Telegram, where government can reach Telegram and say there's specific content that's being spread on your platform or with your platform, through your platform. You need to delete this stuff now. And you need to give us infos about these persons using it because there might be terrorists or whatever. So there's no real mechanism the way these governments want it to be. And so the narrative, very simple. There just needs to be more compliance and everything will be fine. But usually everything will not be fine. As you can see right now in Britain and some other places where the censorship becomes just crazy. If you say anything, if you say something against migrants, if you say something against this or that, then you will be prosecuted, and this just is running out of control. So it's not okay. So that simple narrative doesn't work. But also there's huge problems with this alternative narrative about Telegram, which is Telegram is great. It's against censorship, and it's free, and it's super safe and secure, and it's a great thing. We should all support it, and we should all trust this Durov guy who just got arrested in France, right? But also that narrative doesn't really work for you. So First of all, it's like this. Telegram reminds us of this aggressive corporate ploy that we've seen many times before, even with YouTube, even Facebook in the past to some degree, Netflix, and some of these other corporations. So initially, they offer a great service. It's free. It's there's very little censorship. And you can almost do whatever on the platform. So they want to gather users. They want to get as many users as possible, even though this company runs at a loss for 8 to 10 years, right? So if you remember the old days of YouTube, you can post almost anything, and people were posting the most crazy stuff. It was hosted there for free. And YouTube didn't really make money, or didn't make much money. At some point, there was a big censorship and the new wave, and then YouTube became quite boring, but of course then compatible again to these advertisers, because at some point this company needs to make money. And still then, there's a kind of a left-leaning bias that some people detect in YouTube, obviously, and in Google. But the problem is all these other platforms for hosting video, or for helping you live stream, all these other platforms are gone, or they're almost dead. They can't compete because you can post as much stuff as you want within the guidelines, you can post hours per day of footage, or you can just live stream for hours each day, and you don't have to pay for that hosting. How is any other company going to compete with that? So all the competition is basically dead. You can, of course, host your own video. There's inexpensive software, even free software, and you just have to pay the server or maybe some CDN, and then you can also stream. This is not a problem. But if you want to have sort of a real business, a platform that has a lot of great content, is competitive, and you can build something that's not controlled like YouTube, it's almost impossible to do because everybody's dependent on YouTube, and there's a few competitors right now, but they run into the same problem. These newer platforms, they want to offer a great service. I think they're running at a loss. They want to have as little censorship as possible. They want to get the users, but at some point they will be forced to comply with certain rules, or they want to be able to contact advertisers and not scare the advertisers away. So there's this endless cycle. Then, of course, when YouTube became boring, many people went to TikTok because there was still more you could do and say on TikTok. So all the funny stuff and the fail compilations and the edgy humor and some of the more entertaining stuff and edgy stuff and even crazy stuff and bad stuff, you could do that on TikTok for a while. But then there was the possibility that TikTok gets banned and parents wouldn't let their children use TikTok anymore. And so TikTok now became boring. So everybody's looking for the new video platform that's going to be edgy. So the cycle repeats itself, right? You're looking for a free platform that's big and that's financed by some really weird people, and they let you do things for a while, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything. But this concept never really works. It never works. It never does. So if you want to, if you don't want to pay for a medium, right? It's this free mentality on the internet, and I've been criticizing that for 20 years. So people do not want to pay anything, and they also don't want advertisement. They don't want anything. So how is this supposed to be financed then? How is this supposed to be financed, and how is this supposed to work? And when people got thrown out of Facebook for some edgy stuff and some crazy stuff, they went to Twitter when it was bought by Elon Musk, but now Twitter has the same problem. It's not really making money. And they have to be able to get advertisers, and not many people actually are willing to spend a few dollars a month to use the service. So, and then we get this new information who actually paid for or loaned money or got invested in Twitter when Elon bought it, and it's some really, really shady people, really scary people. So don't expect to get what you want. If you don't pay anything, if you just want to go to that one place, if you're lazy and you don't want to actually use websites like it's been done in the old days, you don't want to pay anybody anything. If you think this is going to work for you, it's not. So, but for a while, Telegram promised to make the impossible possible. It's free to use. Barely any advertisement, or there wasn't any advertisement for a bunch of years. And now they want to make some money with in-app purchases and a little bit of advertising and maybe some subscriptions. And somehow they can pay for the bandwidth, the servers, the CDNs, because you cannot just chat. You can have audio chats. You can share video on the platform, and all that costs money. So how are they going to pay for it? And Telegram itself is saying, we don't care too much about making money. And this Durov guy has spent his own money, and he just loves freedom, and he loves to pose with these yoga pictures and say some libertarian slogans, and he's going to pay for it all. And maybe some investors are going to pay for that. But who are these investors? Who are these people? And what about them analyzing what you do on the platform? They've been talking about, I'll get to that in a minute, they've been talking about using AI to understand what people do and say on the platform, and then they want to have an algorithm to suggest stuff to people, and it sounds really weird. Really weird. And so, and also, the security. If it is, in fact, as secure as people think it is, it would be nice. But if it's not, if Telegram has been infiltrated by who knows, Russian agents or some other agents, and they put in these backdoors, they put in these bugs to exploit, so people can actually read everybody's stuff and access everybody's stuff. Then that would be a whole nother game, a whole nother situation. So that's been heavily debated. And so with Telegram becoming so popular, people just didn't care to look for an alternative or to start an alternative and promote it and make it popular. So by the time Telegram is going to be known for having serious issues, or it's banned in several countries, or some bad stuff comes out about the security, when that happens, many people are left with nothing, or they're not prepared for that. People in Ukraine organizing relief efforts and warning about attacks, or the Russian military relying on Telegram, the Wagner group relying on Telegram, many people in the world relying on Telegram. So this is kind of the aggressive corporate ploy of offering something that's too good to be true, running losses for 10 years. Everybody else can compete. Everybody else goes broke or doesn't even attempt it. And then there's only Telegram, the big thing, and you're then dependent on it. I mean, there's people who got thrown out of Facebook, even Twitter, or they just they will get thrown off these other platforms. And of course, there's going to be more pressure on Twitter or X to comply with certain rules. Yeah, at some point, people just had Telegram to spread their stuff. But what if Telegram has a big problem in the future, or it's not available anymore? Yeah, so I remember the time when we didn't have social media and we didn't need social media. So people had websites. They had download servers for MP3s and video files. There was P2P file sharing. Nobody needed social media platforms. Nobody needed these multi-billion-dollar platforms run by some weird people and they got all this control. We didn't need that. We really didn't need that. And so then we got this arrest now. When it comes to the boss of Telegram, Pavel Durov, right? So there's a whole saga. It's now in its next chapter. So what I can tell you is this: do not use Telegram for anything that's really sensitive. Don't really trust it when your life depends on it or your freedom depends on it. I mean, even if you're an Iranian and you cooperate with the CIA and they give you, or you're Chinese and you cooperate with the CIA and they give you a secure communication system, don't trust it. That's been busted. They made some mistakes, serious mistakes. They burned a lot of sources, and the communication system was then still attached to a bigger communication system, even though it wasn't supposed to be attached. And so this is how a bunch of valuable CIA sources got busted by the Iranians and the Chinese. So if the CIA can't do it, you won't be able. You won't have secure communication through Telegram. You just won't. There's so many problems to this, so many dimensions to this, and I'll try to get through all of it as briefly as possible so you can understand why you need to be careful with all sorts of digital communication. It's also the mindset of, do you really need to do anything illegal to do activism, to improve your situation? Many people think that way. Right-wingers, left-wingers, Islamists, or Muslims in general, or just people who have been drawn into radicalism, and they think that you can't change things the way you want them to change by legal means, and you can't really talk to people. You just have to be conspiratorial. You have to talk some really crazy stuff, and you can only trust people who also say this crazy stuff. So you have to have these secret chat groups in Telegram and whatnot. So first of all, the security of Telegram is very much debatable. The Ukrainians are saying the Russians have the keys to everything. They want to present a big report fairly soon. So that's at least a possibility that should be in the back of your mind, that all your stuff could end up with the Russians. Then, of course, there might be intrusions by the NSA or some other Western agency. They might be able to read that stuff through some sort of digital magic. So they may know your stuff. And also when the Americans know it, then the Russians could possibly steal that information, because America has always been infiltrated by the Russians. So do not trust digital communication at all. And then there's a problem of your device. The device that you're using, the phone, the smartphone, whether it's Apple, whether it's Android, whether it's something else, or your Windows device, an Apple device, or a Linux device, everything is compromised. Consider everything to be compromised. You need to play the game in the right way. You need to try to secure your communications, but securing communications is a broader field. It's not just preventing an intercept, right? It's also, whom do you talk to? What do you talk about? Are you securing yourself? Are you on a secure, safe base? Do you understand the laws? Do you understand what forms of activism are bad for you and overall bad because it doesn't go anywhere? It doesn't really work. It's really, really important to understand. So there's a fight for the narrative right now. Pavel Durov, CEO of Telegram, was recently arrested in France, is now increasingly being portrayed as a martyr of freedom of expression, all that blah, blah, blah. The core argument is that dissidents in Iran, for example, use Telegram, or that Ukrainians used it to organize themselves in the war, but experts know that using the service also involves considerable and above all unnecessary risks. So this is even what the Ukrainians are saying. You should visit reputable websites. There should be some forum type places that are really safe and controlled, where people can just exchange things with each other and message each other. It should be a Ukrainian software using tried and true methods of security. And there should be a variety of services and programs. You shouldn't rely on this one big behemoth that's really a big mystery, this big Telegram behemoth. So you can get good information. I mean, most people who post on Telegram about important issues, these influencers, they don't really know anything. They're not professionals, and some of them they knowingly spread disinformation. So if anybody can really do anything, if anybody's really competent, that person can have his own website or have a presence somewhere, or maybe join an organization or create a bigger organization with other people that are really good at this. But most people, they're not good at this. There's always talk about freedom of expression, freedom of the press using Telegram, but they don't actually know anything. So they're just regurgitating stuff that they heard, stuff that's popular. And that may be propaganda from the Democrats or Republicans or the Russians or something, or extreme right wing or whatever. Almost nobody has an original idea. Almost nobody offers an original perspective. Nobody is nuanced. Everybody just wants to, activate the audience and get popular. So that's kind of the big problem here. So yeah, you don't really need Telegram. And you don't really need Twitter. You don't really need X. And you don't need these shady investors in X or behind X. So Pavel Durov is considered to be filthy rich, although Telegram has never been profitable. No matter how much money he actually controlled, he lived a very comfortable lifestyle, not exactly a stereotype of a Robin Hood. And he wants to come off as an alpha guy and spiritual and whatnot and libertarian and all this stupid marketing. Don't buy that crap for a second. I mean, if I had all this money and I could jet around, I could also have, six-pack abs and post these stupid photos with, the yoga pose and whatever. So Telegram has a few methods of generating money, and it said a while ago, Telegram, it was approaching profitability, was considering an IPO. So yeah, then take it to the stock market and then just run at a loss for 10 more years and just so nobody can really compete with it. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So yeah, it was typical to attract users with weak content moderation. At some point, there will be much more censorship or there will be compliance. So people are making a mistake by doing sensitive or even criminal stuff on Telegram to begin with. And the availability of Telegram so far has encouraged these people to think that this is the way to go. Oh, everybody's doing it, so I must be doing it. It's a very, very stupid idea. So the French authorities could now put pressure on Telegram to moderate more and share more information. So far, there's no procedure in place to allow a European country to quickly contact Telegram to have content removed fast and data retrieved and whatever. So after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Telegram usage exploded. Messages were shared, aid services coordinated, and warnings issued of enemy attacks. Question arises why the Ukrainians or Americans did not program other apps in advance and why no other digital infrastructure was provided. Using Telegram was simply convenient and free, and this is usually how the trap is set for you. There's some other programs that have appeared over the years, how to encrypt your hard drive and how to do this and how to do that. But there's always a crazy backstory to it. There's always a shady backstory to it, and it's weird how the software is so convenient and free, and it's for every version of your Windows system. It's just could be a trap. It's usually a trap. I mean, you remember the scandal with the Swiss company that the Hagelin company or what it was called. And they said we're a neutral company in a neutral country, Switzerland. We make these encryption devices. Back then it was not digital. It was these machines like the German Enigma. So you could type in stuff and the signal would be garbled, and then you could send the garbled signal, and then it would be ungarbled to make it readable. But many countries bought these machines, and then it was suspected that they might be backdoors in the technology. And indeed, it was ultimately revealed that this company was really controlled by the Americans and the Germans. And everybody who used these machines was compromised, completely compromised. So it was able to brute crack these messages to make them readable in a very short amount of time, or reasonable amount of time. So that's that. 72% of Ukrainians get their news via Telegram. That's not a good idea. Privacy is of paramount importance, as the Russians had already drawn up lists of Ukrainians to be imprisoned or targeted for killing before the invasion. The less privacy there is, the more Ukrainians reveal about themselves. So what's your activity? You know, it's like, is Telegram really safe? Do they really don't they collect your data? Don't they analyze who you are and where you are? And may the Russians know everything about you. If you think it's encrypted, do you say things you shouldn't be saying? So far, there's no definitive confirmation that a backdoor has been programmed into Telegram, or that there are vulnerabilities that act as a backdoor and are being exploited by the Russians. In principle, no one should conduct really sensitive communications digitally, no matter what ordinary device or app they use. Wired magazine published the report. The Kremlin has entered the chat with details. Unfortunately, dissidents in Russia constantly use digital communications via Telegram. Hundreds of such people have been confronted with their chat messages in criminal proceedings. This may simply be because the devices used themselves were infected with spy software, thus bypassing Telegram's encryption. And the use of informants is also very typical. So for a while, the Russians wanted to ban Telegram. They tried, but Telegram was buying Telegram was renting infrastructure and renting these servers. So by shutting down these IP ranges, just blocking all these servers that Telegram was using, all the internet was affected in Russia. So they didn't like that. But eventually they would allow Telegram, which means they have some way of getting to those dissidents. In Ukraine, there's currently active discussion about the security of the Telegram messenger, possible restrictions on its use, or even a complete blocking. The reason for the discussions was the column by PetCube founder Yaroslav Azhniuk, which he published in several media outlets, as well as the words of the head of the Ukrainian State Security Service, Kirill Budanov. So, Telegram founder Durov claimed that he and his brother Nikolai created Telegram out of fear of surveillance by the Russian government. Well, if you believe that story, I have my doubts. In 2011, protests against Putin's regime continued in Russia, and the FSB intelligence service demanded that Durov's social network V-Kontakte block opposition groups. Durov allegedly refused to do so, however, as the American publication Wired reports, citing its own source who worked at V-Kontakte during those days. The reason for the refusal was not an ideological position. So then there was a letter allegedly from Durov to Vladislav Surkov, then first deputy head of the Putin administration, in which the businessman allegedly assured that the VK network actively provided information about thousands of users of the site in the form of IP addresses, mobile phone numbers, other information necessary for the identification. Durov denied the authenticity of the letter, so we just don't know at this point. Later, it became known that the two co-founders of V-Kontakte sold their business shares to the Russian financial investment company United Capital Partners. So much for that. The online publication Hopes and Fears, citing its own sources, reported that the sale was supervised by the former deputy head of the Russian government and head of Rosneft, Igor Sechin. Very creepy guy. Since the development of Telegram was already underway at that time, United Capital Partners tried to gain control of the new messenger as well. Durov was accused of using VK resources to develop the application. Eventually, he was fired from VK in 2014. He sold his stake to Russian businessman Ivan Tavrin and left the country. VK was eventually acquired by Russia's Gazprom through repeated resale of shares. Durov launched the Telegram project in 2013, and he claimed to be super mega independent. The service's cloud servers are spread across different jurisdictions around the world, so they have to use other people's data centers, especially when it comes to video content, right? So you gotta have CDN, and this is very specialized. Telegram has to pay money to use all these servers all around the world to make the service available. So you send something to, so your person A is sending something to person B. It goes through these servers, obviously. So, initially Durov stated that he invested his own money received from the sale of VK in the Telegram company. So he was just loved freedom, blah, 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 and he wanted to make this possible, and he spent all his money. In 2017, Durov wanted to launch a cryptocurrency project. About $1.7 billion was invested in the project, and investors included in particular Russian oligarchs Roman Abramovich, Mikhailo Gutseriev, and Mikhailo Abizov. The project failed because the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission accused Telegram of illegally distributing unregistered digital tokens. I mean, imagine this is a problem for law enforcement if everybody can use Telegram, if everybody can shift money for all kinds of crazy stuff. So at some point, this increases the cost for law enforcement. And it makes law enforcement work more expensive. And it makes law enforcement work more complicated, right? So it's like, ironically, Durov and Telegram, they may be the gravediggers of, internet freedom ultimately, because the more crazy stuff that will come out about the use of Telegram, the crazier the stuff we hear, the more likely we see new rules being implemented in the internet. So there may be no more anonymous internet usage in the future, or quasi-anonymous. So everything could be logged and no more anonymous accounts anyway. In 2021, Durov attracted investments, more than $1 billion from the sale of bonds. The main partners then became the investment bank JP Morgan Chase, but the Russian direct investment fund also bought bonds in the secondary market. So if you think that's anti-establishment, you're stupid. Another factor, it's not hard. It's not easy to cooperate with, or to get Telegram to cooperate with you. So, the Ukrainians want to present a big report about Telegram. PetQ president, chairman of the board, Azniuk, published a column in the publication Ukrainian Pravda and the Kiev Independent entitled, "Why Doesn't Ukraine Restrict the Use of Russian Application Telegram?" So Azniuk stated he had a private conversation about the risks of Telegram with the head of the main intelligence directorate in the Ministry of Defense, Kirill Budanov, and the Minister of Digital Transformation, Mikhailo Fedorov. According to Azniuk, Budanov literally said the FSB and only it has the keys to Telegram. The FSB, of course, is Russian intelligence. At the same time, Azniuk stated that in September 2020, the company's vice president, Ilya Perekovsky, communicated with the governor of the Russian Vologda region, Oleg Kushinikov. Kushinikov has been under sanctions from Ukraine, the US, and the UK and Canada for supporting the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So then Azniuk also drew attention to the security issue. Although Telegram claims to have open source mobile apps, they do not mention that no one has ever seen the source code of their backend software, and this is the most interesting thing. In comparison, Signal's server code is partially open. So Telegram is advertising with their openness. You can see the code of the app, but you can't see the other code that we're using on the servers. So, so there's cooperation with the journalists from major American media outlets, cybersecurity specialists from Western countries, Ukrainian media representatives. Together, they are preparing a thorough investigation, which is expected to be completed in the coming months. It will not only be published in the Ukrainian media, And it says, I think then even more doubts about the nature of interaction between Telegram and the FSB, Russian intelligence, will disappear. We'll see about that. So, yeah, so no messenger is truly safe. The internet basically is not safe to begin with. Yeah, so people have been talking about the API being a problem with Telegram. In Belarus, the special services or security services work according to the instructions that describe tools and methods for de-anonymizing Telegram users. Such instructions include advice on joining closed groups to obtain information about users and activities in the messenger. Thanks to modern technologies such as artificial intelligence or the use of certain algorithms, the analysis of a wide variety of data, for example by keywords, is greatly facilitated, which are used by enemy special services. The information collected, says Kuturo, can help the enemy analyze and track public sentiment and reactions to disinformation and subsequent adjust disinformation. At the national level, it's difficult to block the messenger, but it's possible to block access to the application at the level of individual organizations, for example, workplaces or in government structures. The Russian Sandworm group, associated with the main directorate of the GRU, uses Telegram as a command and control infrastructure and for data theft. This group is responsible for the largest cyber attack of all time. It was called NotPetya. Cyber attacks during the opening of the 2018 Olympic Games and attempts to interfere in elections in France and many more things. And since 2015 for constant attacks on energy facilities in Ukraine. So this is pretty serious. If people attack the infrastructure, industry, power, anything, right? Yeah, so this alone will make Western countries. This alone will make Western countries to crack down on Telegram, and there's a reason for it. There's a good reason for it. Do you want to live in the dark? You want to have a blackout, especially when there's another pandemic going on, or you want to have your industry not work anymore? You want to have complete chaos through these cyber attacks. So this is an increased risk, and so of course this risk has to be mitigated, and there needs to be transparency. There needs to be a set of rules. So we need these rules enforced, but we also absolutely have to make sure that these rules are not abused by governments, like in Britain, where they come after people who just criticize, Muslim migrants or whatever. So this is kind of the job that we collectively have to do. We need to have security, we need to have these rules, and we need to prevent abuse of these rules. So it's not good enough to have the mainstream position. Yeah, just governments, do whatever you want, everything will be fine, because it won't be fine. But it's also wrong to take this simplistic approach of let's just have anything possible. Let's just have Telegram and let people do whatever they want, and there's very little or not enough cooperation on the side of Telegram, and we don't even know it's secure or not. Recently, a new version of a spyware for stealing passwords and other data appeared, which also uses Telegram as a command and control server and for storing stolen bank data. Malware is actively promoted, sold to the messenger. Russian pseudo hacktivist groups managed by the Russian special services, they all use Telegram for their information and cyber operations. They daily publish lists of targets for cyber attacks, recruit new members, spread fakes, and so on and so forth. So how much data is really collected about you? Can Telegram read anything you do? Really? Do they know everything you do? So this is why soldiers and employees of the security and defense sector in Ukraine are prohibited from using Telegram, starting with a large-scale invasion. So people recommend going to Twitter, using news sites. You don't need Telegram for most things. You really don't need it. There's also other products like Signal. There's Cryptos, private messenger. There's Matrix. I don't really know these services yet, so you have to check them out. And you shouldn't do anything illegal on them either. There's no such application that would completely protect your correspondence from third parties. So careful what you run on your device. Now, the Russians are extremely unhappy about the arrest of Telegram boss Durov. Vladislav Davenkov, deputy speaker of the State Duma, chamber of the Russian parliament, called for Mr. Durov's release. He said the arrest could be an attempt to gain access to information Telegram holds and that must not be allowed, according to Medusa, a Russian news organization. Certain panic arose among Russian channels after Durov's arrest. Telegram was considered technically reliable and there are no comparable Russian alternatives, so nothing really works because Russia is incompetent, so they use Telegram. Telegram is used by Russian military networks, including on the battlefield. It serves as one of the backbones of military communications on the front lines for information sharing behind the front lines. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of the Wagner militia, used it as his main communications network to criticize the high command and appeal for public support. For Russians, including soldiers looking for information beyond the Kremlin's official televised messages, Telegram has become part of everyday life. Instructions have been passed to the Russian general staff asking them to stop using the application. At the same time, propagandist Margarita Simonyan urged users to delete all their sensitive messages. If Durov's arrest led to a ban on soldiers using Telegram, how could they continue to exchange messages? So we'll see. About that. So let's talk about censorship, or the censorship doctrine in Russia for a minute. There was the 2016 Doctrine of Information Security of the Russian Federation, which calls not only for protecting the sovereignty of the Russian Federation in the information space through nationally owned and independent policy to pursue its national interests, that means tyranny, but also for developing a national system of the Russian internet segment management. So, Vladimir Putin branded the internet network a CIA project. The Russian parliamentarian Irina Yarovaya stated the internet undermines the idea of sovereignty, encroaches on internal sovereign interests, and destroys national security. So they don't like the idea of an internet per se in Russia. So you see all these Russian idiots and just propagandists and just tyrants, wannabe tyrants. You see them all on the web yapping about freedom of speech when it comes to Telegram. But there's no freedom of speech in Russia, and they're specifically against it. And so, if you're an American, if you're a Brit, if you're German or whatever, you should be concerned about your national security. That's patriotic too. And so national security doesn't really mingle and jingle with Telegram so well. So you got to find a solution and not just yip and yap something and repeat something you heard on the internet because it sounds, cool or libertarian. There's a federal law on information that prohibits companies registered in Russia as organizers of information dissemination, including online messaging applications, from allowing unidentified users. It should be noted that Telegram did register as such an organizer, but Telegram pretends to be an outside entity outside of Russian jurisdiction. So, in terms of infrastructure, there's these chat messages in Telegram, there's video content, and all is routed through these servers worldwide. Supposedly great encryption, but are there backdoors? Or maybe somebody gets your information indirectly? Because, for example, the NSA for some reason may see you as a suspicious person, or somebody else sees you as a suspicious person, and they understand that you're using Telegram and some other things to obfuscate. And so this is how they determine that you're a person of interest, and they can break into your system and they can just break into your devices and figure out what you're doing. So circumventing any encryption that's on your device. Of course, Telegram has a client-server model. At the core of the architecture, there's a peer-to-peer function. Then there's CDN networks that are being rented or used for video content. And they say they use the AES 256 encryption, which is kind of the standard, but even that is highly questionable. You have to be aware of possible backdoors. And service relies on cloud-based storage for message storage and synchronization. When a user sends a message, it is encrypted and stored in the cloud, which just means servers, which can be accessed from any device connected to the user's account. This ensures messages are always available and synchronized across multiple devices. Oh, it's so convenient, right? It's free. And then it says Telegram uses artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies to improve its user experience. These technologies enable it to provide more personalized and relevant content to users, while also improving the efficiency and effectiveness of its messaging platform. So that sounds like they're analyzing everything you're doing, and they're using that information to whatever end. Another example is its spam detection and prevention features. The platform uses automated machine learning algorithms to analyze messages in cloud chats and detect patterns of spam and malicious behavior patterns. This helps keep its messaging platform clean and secure while reducing the unwanted messages that users receive. Strange. They say Telegram's AI and machine learning capabilities will likely continue to evolve and improve to better understand user behavior and preferences, understand your mind, basically, enabling it to provide users with more personalized content and recommendations. So it sounds like a bit like what's been done with Facebook data and Cambridge Analytica. Remember when Cambridge Analytica got a bunch of Facebook data, and they apply these algorithms, which are called psychometrics. They can measure your personality according to different attributes, and they understand really who you are. They can predict your behavior, and they can use more data to understand you even better. It's a really scary field. I've done some videos on it and some content on it. I've a chapter in it in one of my books. So the trailblazers were the Americans. With the Simulmatics Corporation, there's an interesting book about that. And when they started this in the late 50s and 1960s with the early computers, they already had the best minds to do this stuff, and it kept improving all the time, and it became a big thing. And some of this research led to some fictional stories, and that became kind of the inspiration for the Matrix movies, right? There was this one book, I forgot its title, where there's a whole fake civilization, a little civilization, as a computer experiment. So these are fake people, and at some point, these people realize that they're fake, and their existence is not real. And there's these agents or whatever the humans that can enter this virtual reality environment, right, and just interact with these fake people. But then, of course, these scientists become increasingly paranoid because they think they themselves might be part of a simulation. They themselves might not be real. It says here, as Telegram approaches 500 million active users, this was a while ago, maybe a few years ago, many of you are asking the question, who's going to pay to support this growth? After all, more users mean more expenses for traffic and service. A project of our size needs at least a few hundred $100 million per year to keep going. For most of Telegram's history, I paid for the expenses of the company, this is Durov speaking, paid for the company from my personal savings. However, with its current growth, Telegram is on track to reach billions of users and to require appropriate funding. When a tech project reaches this scale, typically there are two options: start earning money to cover the costs or sell the company. Well, they wanted an IPO. All the features that are currently free will stay free. We'll add some new features for business teams or power users. Some of these features will require more resources and will be paid for by these premium users. Regular users will be able to keep enjoying Telegram for free forever. That's what they promise now. But what if some countries decide to not rent out their infrastructure to Telegram? What if it's being blocked here, it's blocked there, and there's problems with Telegram here, problems with Telegram there? So they will, at some point, they will need new investors, and they will need to have new censorship, and they will need to, take this company public, and then there's going to be more advertising, and the platform may become boring, right? As I said, people have been using it. They've been so extreme and so crazy. They got kicked out of other platforms. And instead of creating their own things and popularizing these own things, they use the simple way and free way of publishing on Telegram. So you don't have to care about hosting. You don't have to care about distribution. And this is kind of the trap that's been going on for a long time in the internet. It's this lowering the threshold for you to publish things. So you don't actually have to spend you don't have to spend a few bucks a month to host a website. It's so easy to host a website these days. You don't need to spend some extra money to host your own video on server or servers. You don't actually need to be able to understand the basics of web hosting and setting things up and making it look nicer and just fiddling with the settings. You don't have to know any of that. And you don't have to pay anybody who knows this stuff. And then, of course, you don't have to know anything in terms of your content. You can just steal other people's content and say what's popular and just regurgitate that nonsense. There's no threshold. And also, you don't actually need to promote your stuff if you just regurgitate popular things and you have a platform actually making your channel visible and just advertising your channel to other people so they can find it. It's very convenient, right? You don't have to spend advertisement. You don't have to actually know anything about advertisement. You need absolutely zero skills, and you can become sort of popular. Or if you're just a reader, you just read all that stuff, and you think these people are competent, but they're not. They're absolutely not. And then you can get radicalized online, and they lure you into these secret chat rooms, and then you say stuff you shouldn't be saying, and at some point you will get caught. This is kind of the scam. It says all parts of Telegram devoted to messaging will remain ad-free. Blah blah blah. So this is also how they prevent competition. They just destroy competition. Somehow they will find the money. Some weird and powerful investors, or they take the company public and they have investors meetings and they got the money so they can use Telegram and it stays free for users. Nobody else can compete with that. Yeah, so this is not a good thing. So, of course, the software relies on standard encryption algorithms. They talk about the Diffie-Hellman and the other hash encryption, and they talk about AES 256. AES 256, which is a Western algorithm, right? It's a Western algorithm. And there were many candidates back in the day, to replace the older algorithm, which was then crackable with enough computing power. So they had kind of a competition of submitting candidates for becoming the new standard used by banks and governments and military. And so these different scientists submitted these candidates, and all of them were shady. Some of them came from, I think one came from IBM. It was called Serpent. It was everything was suspect. And finally, I think it was called Rindale candidate won. It became the new standard for everything. But the Europeans then actually had to review all these candidates. All European institutions reviewed all these candidates, and they didn't have enough time to really understand these algorithms that well. But what they could find out in the limited amount of time was there's some weird stuff going on. They're doing things in a weird way, and it's just like it serves only obfuscation. So imagine it like this. An algorithm is a scrambler. It takes a signal, something you say, a recording or text, and it garbles it, it scrambles it. And then you can unscramble it if you have the key. So if you intercept the message that's garbled and you try to make it readable by using just lots of computer power, it just takes too long. It's not doable. Unless, of course, there are weaknesses in the cryptography or even backdoors in the cryptography. So if you know the secret thingy-majingy, then you can make an intercepted message readable in minutes or days or even weeks. There may be many little weaknesses intentionally built in this giant maze of code. And only if you know enough of these vulnerabilities, only then can you make these garbled messages readable. So there's a whole backstory to it, and you really have to understand how these intelligence services work. This became the Western standard. Why wouldn't they make a backdoor into it? I mean, many tech people, they just don't want to hear it. They just want to believe in encryption as the way it is, the way they've been using it, and they just don't want to hear anything else. But you cannot really trust these algorithms with your life, your safety, and your freedom. As I said, the Hagelin was the Boris Hagelin Corporation in Switzerland, promising all the big promises. We're just so reliable. It's a neutral country, just so everybody can buy the stuff and be secure. Everybody bought it, and everybody was tricked, and there was backdoors in that. So a couple of years ago, somebody found a huge bug in the software, or in the encryption model that Telegram uses. And so there's a whole explanation to it. So they try to dumb it down for the reader who's not a cryptographer, obviously. Almost nobody's a cryptographer. So it says here, so Alice wants to start a secret chat with Bob, informs the Telegram server about it. The server gives Alice an open prime number, a primitive root modular. Alice generates a private key, and based on it, a public key, which he passes to the server. Server generates its own keys and then passes this to Bob under the, and so on and so forth. Bob generates keys. So they exchange keys. And so then they can talk to each other, supposedly in a secure way. And so it says this bug was reported, and the vulnerability had then been fixed. Documentations and applications have been updated by Telegram. This guy said we must give credit to the Telegram developers who immediately responded to this article. But there's some scientific studies from cryptographers that have a different opinion on this. So they find more ways to attack, and it's suggestive of backdoors, or it could mean backdoors and bug doors, right? So these guys, these scientists, they have to be very, very scientific and specific. They can only say what they can prove. They don't want to do speculation, but they can imply, of course, things. And what they're saying is there's different weird things about the cryptography of Telegram. There's weird things about it. They're not using tried constructions. They have built their own construct. And they said it has weird problems, and anytime they fix a problem, they potentially introduce new problems. So they can say, we fixed this thing, somebody found a bug or a vulnerability, somebody found it, thank you so much, we just immediately fixed it. But then they introduce other problems, potentially, which can also be used as a backdoor. So for example, we have from the Aarhus University computer science master thesis, practical cryptanalysis of the Telegram messaging protocol. This is from 2015. It's not new, but it just gives you a general idea of the problem. It says, instead of using proven cryptographic constructs, Telegram opted to create its own original protocol known as MT-Proto. The official Telegram client application is open source, allowing for full auditing, but the server software is not. And even if something is open source, it's like a complicated maze of code, and even if you can audit the code, it doesn't guarantee that you find backdoors, basically. In this work, we have shown that Telegram, with its use of aging primitives, does not manage to provide data integrity of ciphertext nor authenticated encryption, and is vulnerable to chosen ciphertext attacks and so on. The attempt to mitigate known attacks has introduced new vulnerabilities, and we suggest the Telegram team updates its protocol used to strong modern primitives. So they give these suggestions. Overall, we can conclude yet again that homegrown cryptography is a bad approach. So so the Russians they tried to ban Telegram for a while. Other countries have tried to ban Telegram. China, Pakistan, Oman, Iran. And it's not so easy to block the whole thing. Telegram decided to mount its defenses and make it hard, if not impossible, for the Russian authority to block the IP addresses associated with the messenger. So Telegram is relying on cloud services, which they rent. The processing power of the equipment owned by such processing power of the equipment owned by such giants as Google, Amazon, and other specialized providers. So again, they rely on these services. If Google and Amazon, if they stop complying with Telegram, that could be a problem for Telegram. And this is also a problem with YouTube in Russia. YouTube basically wants to get Russia wants to get rid of YouTube, and so by blocking or fining Google hasn't updated its servers in a while over there, and so that's why YouTube isn't functioning so well in Russia now. So the IP addresses associated with this Google and Amazon equipment, the equipment used for instance by Telegram, the Telegram messenger. So this equipment would correspond to the IP addresses of Google data centers. So they're powering Telegram, but also a lot of other web services, internet banking, online shopping, blah, blah, blah. So Telegram relies on using such cloud services, including the ones provided by Amazon and Google. So if you just blacklist whole IP ranges, then other stuff doesn't work in the internet. Eventually, the Russians allowed Telegram, but they probably have ways to get people's chats in another way. Maybe through a backdoor, maybe through just infecting the user devices. Yeah. So Telegram was temporarily suspended throughout Brazil. China blocked access to the messenger. Some internet service providers in India were blocking Telegram traffic, including the official website. The Iranian government asked all messaging apps, including Telegram, to move all Iranian users' data to Iranian servers. In 2017, the Iranian government completely blocked Telegram's new voice calls, and on and on and on. So in Iran, so in various countries, dissidents have used Telegram, which, as I said, is too difficult. It's too dangerous. There should be alternatives being used, and they should be completely audited. And you really need to be careful what you're doing in countries like Iran or China. If even the CIA can't guarantee your safety with a communication technology, then you should be really careful about what you're doing. Your devices may be hacked, so just rethink your whole activism scheme or what you're getting into. And in terms of the West, in the West, it's different than, of course, in Iran and places like that. So the focus should be on legal activism and smart activism and have layers of protection and figure out the methods of protection, legal protection, other types of protection. Stay as legal as you possibly can and don't get drawn into anything stupid, because this is always the trap that the government agencies are using. They get you into this illegal crap, and then they can get you. You see, in Russia, they'll just get you if you say anything against the government, against the war. If they want to come after you, they come after you, and point to any kind of law. This is not possible in the West unless you say illegal stuff and do illegal stuff on these supposed encrypted apps. So then they can get you. And also they keep adding more laws and more laws and more felony laws in America, for example. And so if the government wants to find something against you, they may be able to find something against you. This is, of course, a huge problem. But the answer to these problems is not hyping up a very strange app and relying on that app and doing stupid extremist things. So then we got this other story that's relevant also to this. Russian and other weird investors in Twitter. So an investment fund linked to the sons of Russian oligarchs Peter Aven and Vadim Moshkovich played a role in helping Elon Musk acquire Twitter, now rebranded as X. This revelation comes from a court document from the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California, as reported by the Washington Post. In 2022, Musk finalized the purchase of Twitter for a staggering $44 billion, aided by a variety of financial institutions, banks, and funds. Among the investors, the venture capital firm 8VC stands out as one of the 100 largest backers of the acquisition. 8VC is a US-based fund, includes among its personnel the sons of the Russian oligarchs Aven and Moshkovich, both of whom have been subject to Western sanctions due to their association with Russia's political elite. So creepy guys. So these guys, they served in the Federation Council, the upper chamber of the Russian parliament. Peter Aven, another prominent oligarch, is the president of Alpha Group, one of Russia's largest financial industrial consortia. Like Moshkovich, Aven has been targeted by Western sanctions. So both of their sons have found success in the United States working for 8VC. And there's some other creepy investors as well. There's more weirdos. There's more weirdos when it comes to that. So Andreessen Horowitz, 8VC, Jack Dorsey, Ross Gerber, Draper Fisher, Jurvetson, Sequoia. 26 entries related to Fidelity, the mutual fund colossus. Larry Ellison, the Oracle founder, one of the richest people in the world, along with Sean Combs Capital. So I think this is P. Diddy, the guy who's embroiled in scandal right now. Vi Capital, then the UAE-based venture capital firm, Vi Capital, UAE-based, so these Arabs. Something called Q Tetris Holdings, whose directors seem to be part of the Qatari government. Binance, crypto giants listed as an investor. Binance CEO Changpeng Zhao pleaded guilty to money laundering. 2 entries are Prince Al-Walid bin Talal for the Kingdom Holding Company. Prince Al-Walid briefly opposed Musk's takeover, soon came around. Blah, blah, blah. Given Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's years-long crackdown against dissident and powerful businessmen and political rivals, it's likely that MBS controls these shares. There's been stuff written about Saudi Arabia's relationship with Twitter and its use of spies inside Twitter HQ to dox and imprison dissidents. So yeah, of course, so there's always some kind of cooperation going on or infiltration going on. So sometimes even the Twitter leadership doesn't really understand it or know about it. So yeah, that's a creepy group of guys. So don't think Twitter or X is anti-establishment, just because they allowed some right-wing content back on the platform. And there's some new security features, and people are paranoid now that their information ends up with the Israelis. That's been going around for a while. Haven't really checked on that, but the same rules always apply. Do not do anything stupid on the web. Do not fall for traditional conspiracy mythology. Do not make unnecessary enemies, right? So you could find some more material on my channel about traditional conspiracy mythology, how false it is and how much it was run by various countries and governments. And you can also find some interesting stuff about Israel. After such a long time of Islamic imperialism, it was so much imperialism. Then you had this tiny little state of Israel, and the moment they had a state for the first time in forever, of course they became more aggressive. But do not misinterpret this as anything more than it truly is. So there's so much stupid stuff going around, and it's likely that different countries have your data already or can get your data. There's been software advertised to grab in bulk all the stuff that's put out on X and stuff that's put out on other platforms and even Telegram. They want to read everything and it automatically create profiles. And they can find out who you are, and they have a super profile on you, so they know what you've been doing and who you talk to and who you're connected to. And so this can become a problem for you in the future, once you get down to doing or saying illegal stuff. And then, of course, different governments, they already know you, so they can get to you. And they have all your data, so they can, maybe put you to prison. And it all looks like, and it's all going to be legally sound. The governments, they can point at the laws and say, we just followed the laws. This person broke the laws, so we got this person and we just nailed him. Now, especially when you are conspiring against, let's say, the United States. You conspire against the United States by working with the Russians. You're accepting money from the Russians. You're talking about, breaking apart the Union with the help of the Russians. And you just talk about joining some new entity with an alliance with Russia and stuff like that. So this can get you into really, really big problems. Really big problems. And there's so much stuff that we've seen. The Q stuff, then there's some related stuff, and this whole brouhaha. And people became so radicalized, and they started to do illegal things because they thought they had all this backing. They had this backing by this secret group, and secret backing by the Russians, and secret backing, from Trump and all that stuff that people believe for so long. This is always the scam. This is how it's been done. So be absolutely aware of the vulnerability of all devices, all digital devices. Okay, so you need to get smart about your activism, and you need to consider alternative methods of communication, such as radio communications. So get into radio. There's some really cheap good radio sets available. It may not be encrypted. Some of it is encrypted. And you can have at least some other means of communication when the internet doesn't work or certain devices do not work. So let's say all your Windows devices are bricked or broken because of a malware, or your Apple devices are broken, or your Android devices, they're all destroyed. They can't function anymore. And you can't buy a new device because everybody wants to buy new devices, and there aren't enough devices. So this is why you should have a backup plan for communications and have radio signals. Now, with an antenna on your roof, you can almost talk to the entire United States basically, or even beyond that. So this is what people should get into. This old school stuff, and of course, there's shortwave radio with an antenna and a device. You can get a decent sounding signal, and you just need one antenna to spread it. It's like one antenna, and you just send the stuff. You send out the signal. Anybody can receive it, and it's not traceable who listens to the signal. You can trace the antenna, right? But you can't trace who is listening in on this stuff. There's no way of telling, right? And also, there's still books, and books are still the most important source of information. Quality books written by experts about all kinds of important topics. And if you have paper books, if you buy paper books, I mean, usually you buy your books on the web, so that can be traced. But even then, I mean, you can build your own library, and nobody will ever know how much of the stuff you actually read, and how smart you get. And you can just recommend books to other people. You can give books to other people, and that's not traceable either. But if you have only digital books, they know exactly what you read, how long you read it, what stuff you underline. They know everything about you. And they can shut off your book collection. They can just turn it off. So be mindful of that. It's become almost impossible to have secure communications. I mean, fully secure communications. Get into some of this old school stuff, and be aware of modern types of eavesdropping equipment. It's gotten so good. The tiniest things can be built into your desk, or the feet of your desk, or into a cable, or a plug, or anything, your toaster, everything, a fabric, anything, any device can be put into anything, even into your walls, and you can never find it. You cannot find it with a simple bug detector. It's become so sophisticated, so it's almost impossible to have truly secure communications. And so this is how you need to adjust your strategy. Protect your info, yes, from the usual threats. But just be really, really mindful if you do anything illegal or stuff that can get you into serious trouble. Now, for the French, when they got this guy now, this Durov guy, the Telegram guy, the French have the craziest laws when it comes to terrorism or facilitating terrorism or helping terrorism. If anything is terrorism related, they can classify a lot of evidence, and it just they have such power over you. The whole court case becomes so big, you can't really fight against it that much. So they can really get you and anybody who's helped you in any way. And it's always like this. Somebody has, puts out something, the dark web with the Tor browser, which is also very shady. The whole Tor system was initially created by the US government. And so somebody provides something like this, supposedly secure, and then people get on it and they do all kinds of crazy, illegal, disgusting stuff. And then, of course, it has consequences. And the consequences usually are it gets worse for everybody. Okay, so don't follow the mainstream narrative. It's too simple. And don't follow the so-called alternative narrative either, because it's way too simple. Visit websites, just demand people have websites and have their own servers rented and their own infrastructure, their own video platforms, which is doable nowadays. Keep supporting good platforms and build them up. Don't expect the algorithm of some social media outlet to do the magic, or just wait for something to blow up, or just follow what seems to be popular, because you never know how these algorithms really work. If there's a network that's attached to another network and suddenly they get popular and they say some very simple stuff that gets people angry. The whole internet is so controlled these days. It's much worse than it was 10 years ago, and it's much worse than it was 20 years ago. This insane amount of control, and people going along with it because it's convenient. And it says, well, they save a few bucks and they compromise everything through it. Okay, that was the new episode of Candor Intelligence Briefing. Hope you join us with the next show. We'll figure out when to do it on a regular basis. Support this platform. Check out my books on Amazon. You can get them you can get a lot of books on there. You can also get stuff on Patreon. You can support us on Patreon. You can also get my climate espionage movie Secret Science movie on Patreon, and of course visit candorintel.com, subscribe to this channel, and spread us on social media, because that's important, because the algorithm just won't do this for us, obviously. So I'll see you next time, and also check out the other shows that we have with Jeff Nyquist, Friends and Enemies, and of course the other videos.